Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Phillips Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Phillips provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Phillips Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we cover all the home teams with an emphasis on the New Orleans Saints. They prepare for the NFC Championship. Hope to get to the LSU Tigers, maybe the New Orleans Pelicans. We've got a great panel, as always. From Fox 8 Sports, Chris Hagan joins us on the show. And his first time with us tonight, Seth Dunlap of WWL Radio is also on the panel tonight. Guys, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being with us, as always. Always like to start off, as you know, Chris, letting folks know a little bit about what you guys are involved in. Of course, the great shows over at Fox 8. I've told the audience on radio, and of course here before, my DVR is set at 10:30 on Fox 8 every single night. And you guys have done some great stuff during the football season.
Appreciate that, man, and hopefully we keep it going a couple more weeks here.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, Mondays we got the Black and Gold Review. Tuesday, Fox 8 Overtime, a roundtable type show. Wednesday nights we've got Game Plan, and then Sundays, the Fox 8 Live Tailgate. This week we'll be going from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., getting you ready for the Saints game, and then we'll wrap it up on the Final Play as always. So a ton of great stuff, and you can check out the Final Play app as well. Anything you want to check out, coach interviews, player interviews, all that stuff, right there on the Final Play app.
Now your blog now, have you kind of morphed into what's going on with the Saints?
Oh, yeah. It's all Saints. We've obviously fantasy football's passed, so
helped a lot of guys out this year, by the way.
Hopefully I did help you out. I had some success in my own league, so hopefully that translated to some others as well.
Seth Dunlap making his first appearance. Seth, and I told you this personally, you know, I like a guy that, again, has a strong opinion, that knows what he's talking about, that's entertaining, informative. And I look forward, again, anytime I can, to listen to Seth Dunlap on WWL Radio. I think he does a fantastic job. I think he's one of the very best hosts we have in the city. We're happy to have him here with us tonight here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, Eric, I've been actually itching to get on your show here. And by the way, I should have read your blog for fantasy football because my season did not go well.
I did read the blog. I did okay.
Yeah, my season did not go well. Yeah, we're busy, fun busy. This is the fun busy though. This time of year when you have the Saints in the NFC Championship. So we're basically wall-to-wall coverage of the Saints. I think I saw. I don't know if you're out. I think I saw you yesterday out there, but we were out there doing the press conferences today. We're carrying those live. My show 8 to 11 on WWL Sports Talk before us. We got weekend shows, lots online, radio.com app, WWL.com, and it's full go right now, fellas.
8 to 11 weekdays, right?
8 to 11
Monday
through Friday.
You're also doing stuff on Sundays, but before the Saints game as well, right?
Yeah. It's our Saints game day coverage. Steve Court and I, former Saints offensive lineman, on Fans First Take. It's the first pregame show that starts, I think, this week at 10 o'clock. So we're 10 to noon, and Bobby and Christian will take over after that. And then we actually have a special show this Saturday. If you're in the city, you can head up to Rouse's on Vetson Causeway. Rouse's out in Metairie. And you can check out, I think it's Bobby Deuce and I from noon to 3, a live show out there.
There you go. Again, not a native New Orleanian like Chris and I, but tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I grew up in the Northwest, Pacific North. I understand your girlfriend or
my fiance's from
fiance. I grew up in Seattle, Washington until I was about 10. Moved over to the east side of the state, Spokane, Washington. Went to Washington State University, go Cougs, the Pirate up there, Mike Leach, doing a good job for us. And had an opportunity to go work in Seattle or come down here 8 years ago, almost to the month. Right. And decided after they flew me down here, love the city, love the people, and have enjoyed it ever since.
Well, we're glad to have you, man. Do a great job over at WWL. Guys, let's get started. Obviously, Saints 20, Eagles 14. Looking back on that, we'll talk a bit also about the Saints and Rams this Sunday, 2:05 kickoff at the Dome. But let's start with Chris. Chris, first, look back at the Eagles game. Again, a lot of people thought that the Saints may be going to dominate. It wasn't that way. As a matter of fact, it was a very slow start, a start that in the past they've been they're really tough to overcome when Breeze starts as slow as they did. But second, third, and fourth quarters, complete domination by the Saints defense and offense. Your thoughts on the Eagles game?
Yeah, the way the defense played has really been the theme of the last couple of weeks in terms of keeping them in games until the offense can pick it up, or keeping them in games the whole game like we saw against the Panthers. So, credit to that side of the ball. I spent the week in Philadelphia before it, and they were a rejuvenated Eagles team that felt like, once they got in the playoffs, it was anybody's game, and that's true. And I think the fact that they'd won their last 3 road games, when you're talking about Chicago, Washington, and Los Angeles. They beat the Rams late in the season. They're a confident team no matter where they were playing, and so I expected it to be a close game. I didn't expect the Saints to be in a 14-0 hole, and I think I tweeted it out. That drive where Marshawn Lattimore got the interception, I think the Eagles were a touchdown away from probably winning that game. It was scary there for a little bit, but again, the Saints did a great job of taking that mantra of playing all 60 minutes, and they did an excellent job the last 45 minutes and had a good win. So I expected a close game from an Eagles team that they were definitely carrying a chip on their shoulder, definitely not happy about the way the first game went, but I didn't expect it to go that way. But that's the NFL for you.
Your thoughts, Seth?
Yeah, well, last week I was with Chris. I thought this was more worried about the Eagles game than I was actually this Rams game, because of the way that team is coached by Doug Peterson towards the end of the season. If you look at the best run franchises in the NFL, you got to include Philadelphia in it now. They got the owner, they got the general manager, they got the head coach, and now they have 2 quarterbacks. This is a franchise that's going to be among the contenders in the NFC, I think, until Doug Peterson, maybe Jeffrey Lurie, as long as they're there. That's a scary franchise. They obviously had the championship pedigree, and I thought it would be close. I thought the Saints, what they had done earlier in the regular season, exposed some weaknesses that they would be able to take advantage of against the Eagles. They weren't really able to take advantage of the same areas that they were, except Michael Thomas over the middle against that really depleted secondary. And they really got rolling. They weren't able to find anything downfield except the pass that Breeze missed, which really could have broken open that football game a little bit. Breeze talked about that throw, I think, on our station today, saying he should have hit that throw. He just hesitated a half second too long. The Taysom one downfield. So it could have been a little bit, maybe you wouldn't have the Foles magic there at the end, and I was worried about that too. I think the most terrifying thing in football was Nick Foles with the ball in a 1-score game or late, and we saw it, and there's Marshawn Lattimore. Kind of fortune that the Saints didn't get last year in Minnesota. Maybe paid them back a little bit. Yeah,
no doubt. Little football karma. I agree about the Marshawn Lattimore pick. Obviously, that again turned the tide. But what was it? 18 plays, 92 yards, 11:29 off the clock. As good of a drive as again you've ever seen in this Saints franchise history. And of course, a drive that almost took the entire third quarter. I mean, and of course that kind of set the tone in the second half.
There's so many impressive parts about that drive, but also parts about that drive that you didn't want to see. Obviously, the penalties. Nobody wants to have to go out there and run that many plays. Those guys were gassed after that because of the false start and a couple holding calls on Max Unger and Andrews Pete. Max Unger's first penalty in years that set him back, that made for some 2nd and 20, 3rd and 16 long plays they had to convert. And the way that the Eagles stopped the run, typically when you have a drive like that, it's because you're chipping away with the run game. You're not picking up chunks on 3rd and 16 and 2nd and 20 and converting plays like that. And so that was one thing that did worry me about that game period, was the fact that the Saints rushing for more than 170 yards the first time against the Eagles. When I watched the first time they played, I was like, there's no way. That Eagles front seven is so good, and I knew that wasn't going to happen again. And so, like Seth said, Michael Thomas was the game breaker and the guy that allowed the Saints to move the ball, and he did it on that drive, converting a 2nd and 9, a 2nd and 20, and a 3rd and 16. And so he was obviously a huge part of that, and that's what changed the game, that drive that ate up the third quarter and really, I feel like, put that Saints offense back on track.
Yeah, no doubt. Your thoughts on the drive?
Yeah, there was the one throw, I think it was 3rd and 13 to Michael Thomas when they were playing kind of blanket zone coverage right at the sticks. And Drew stepped up in the pocket, and you could tell he trusts Michael Thomas to not only make the catch, but also use his momentum to get the first down, because he actually caught the ball about a yard, maybe a yard and a half in front of the sticks. And I was sitting to my right, I think it was Mike Detillier, and I was sitting next to Bobby, and we watched the replay go, that was an incredible throw. It wasn't, you wouldn't think so if you're just watching it that lie, but the pinpoint accuracy to lead Michael Thomas on the inside, right between two Eagles defenders, you could just tell it was one of the Saints' days. I think it's got to be one of the most impressive drives in postseason history, because it was a divisional game on a conference title game or a Super Bowl. Might get lost in the annals of history. That really was one of the more impressive drives in postseason history. It really was.
Now, something to come out of that game, obviously, again, we know that the offensive line was injured going in. Pete really struggled, but Sheldon Rankins goes down, and of course, he has had his best season as a pro. How big of a loss?
I think it's a loss. You don't find three tech guys that athletic every day, and what he's been able to do is versatility. The burst he has, the way that he's been able to make plays. I think one of the most impressive plays he made was he ran down Ezekiel Elliott when he got around the edge one time, again, in that Dallas game. It was super impressive for him to move that quickly. So what he's been able to do with the interior pass rush and that side of the line with Cam Jordan, it's been very impressive. So you're going to miss a guy like that, but that is a position where at least the Saints are deeper than others. When you talk about having Stallworth and Davison and Onyemata there that have played some pretty good ball themselves, obviously you want all hands on deck when you've got to stop a duo like Todd Gurley and C.J. Anderson. So yes, it's a loss, but I do think those guys have played well enough and shown flashes enough that they can make up for the loss.
Your thoughts on the loss of Rankins?
I agree. And the pass rush that he provided from the interior, kind of they've missed since Nick Fairley retired from football. That's an area they're really going to miss. But run defense-wise, with Stallworth and Tyler Davison, and really Onyemata too, they have the bodies inside. I think just to be much better than Dallas was on the inside. Everybody's talking about the Rams running game, 273 yards last week.
Surprising.
Yeah. Surprising, especially against that Dallas defense. But that Dallas defense on the road wasn't the same. And the Saints' run defense, especially on the interior, frankly, was better throughout the entire season. Saints' third-rate rush defense in the league. Cowboys were 9th. There's a reason for that. I don't expect this Saints team to get gashed, even without Sheldon Rankins. Now, the lack of pass rush against maybe the best offensive line in football worries me a little bit.
Yes. Let's talk a little bit about the offensive line, because, again, I think we've all kind of pinpointed going back to the struggles of this offense. The offensive line started to get injured. You've got Pete now with the hand injury. Of course, Unger had a little bit of a knee injury. Ramczyk with the shoulder. Armstead with the pec. He went full. I didn't get today's injury report. Maybe you guys can fill us in. Bushrod had the hamstring, and we know that Wolford had the knee. So they're all been injured at some point this season or had some type of an ailment. But again, it really showed against Philadelphia last week. And now you're going against, again, maybe one of the best fronts, if not the best front in the NFL. Your thoughts on the offensive line, the ability to be able to protect Breeze, especially up the middle, because, again, we know the recipe for success for opposing teams is, again, to try to, jam them up the middle, stop Breeze from being able to step up on passing downs, and then, again, trying to bottle up that run as well.
Yeah, you really saw Fletcher Cox have his way against that Saints offensive line, and it wasn't just Pete. I know he didn't have a great game and got several holding calls on him, but the whole line didn't have their best game. I think as far as injuries, that's kind of the nature of the beast right now. When you get to this point of the season, everybody's going to be a little bit banged up. So as long as I'm not seeing, non-participation in practice, I'm not too worried. I think you're not going to see those guys go full. A limited participation is what you'd expect middle of the week, so they can get a little bit of rest. But certainly the challenge is going to be there. I think that's where Peyton's job is going to have to be scheming protection to mask some of those deficiencies, to mask an Andrus Peat injury to his hand, to mask any ailments to Teron Armstead or anyone else on that line. And so you're going to see some interesting things. I think you're going to see a couple times where Unger is going to have to help Pete on Donald, and maybe Warford's going to have to go one-on-one with Ndamukong Suh, who's a guy who doesn't get talked about because he's playing next to Aaron Donald. And so the challenge is going to be there, certainly. But I think, as Breeze talked about, similar to 2009, they were kind of tracking the Vikings, knew that the Vikings would be the team they'd face. This year, kind of with that Rams, you know what's coming your way. And so I think it's something they've had their mind on, and they had it schemed well the first time. So you've got to at least think that they're going to have something prepared to protect Breeze, because that's obviously the biggest part of that offense is keeping Breeze clean and keeping that interior pressure from getting to him.
Seth, the interesting thing was in the game in Week 9, the offensive line really handled the front of the Rams. Again, you look at the situation against Dallas, where the offensive line really has some struggles against Dallas. They now have a two-headed monster in terms of what they're doing with their running game there. The Saints are pretty much the same in terms of what they're doing with the running game. Match up that offensive line against the Los Angeles defensive line, and your thoughts.
Well, I think when the Saints offensive line is healthy, as they showed in that game, they can handle even a sensational defensive front, probably the best defensive front in football. But look, what Andrus Peat did last week playing with the cast and the broken hand, that's admirable. Admirable doesn't mean good, guys. He wasn't good. It's admirable he played. He was just flat out bad last week. The 4 penalties, multiple times just getting run over by Fletcher Cox. So they've got to fix that issue. And you said he'll scheme some way to protect Pete in the interior of that offensive line against Aaron Donald and Ndamukong Suh. That's going to be a Houdini act, because I don't know what they're going to do here. I wonder if they're really going to watch and see how Pete does in the opening drive, maybe 2 of that game, and maybe it's Bushrod in there, because you can't have 4 penalties. You can't give up sacks and penetration consistently to the best player in football. I don't think Aaron Donald is the best defensive player in football. I think he's the best player in football. He's that impactful. And watch out here. You know he's going to be fired up, because you're right. He didn't do anything in this game previously.
Seth, how much of a drop-off in your mind if they have to go to Bushrod from Pete?
There's a drop-off from a healthy Andrus Peat. There's no doubt. Andrus Peat's one of the best run-blocking guards in football. He hasn't been able to stay completely healthy the last couple of years. He's been moved around when Teron Armstead's been injured, so he's had to fluctuate back and forth across that offensive line. I'm not bashing Andrus Peat here. Andrus Peat has been critical to that line. He's been very versatile. But at this point of the year, if you're not good and you're a liability on the field against that defensive front, I wouldn't be surprised to see Bushrod in. But look, Jamon, it's not his natural position. He can play it. I don't think it's a favorable matchup for the Saints if he's playing guard.
Your thoughts? How much of a drop-off?
Yeah, I would say the same. I think it's all in health. You can't have a guy out there that can only give you, 60, 70% of what he would usually do, because that is where Bushrod would be better than Andrus Peat at 60 or 70% or whatever you can do against Aaron Donald. And so I'm sure that's another thing that the Saints will have to keep in mind. Bushrod at least has the experience. They brought him in for his versatility. He can play a couple of different spots, but that's going to be a challenge, really, no matter who you put in that spot going up against Aaron Donald.
Let's talk a little bit about Kamara and Ingram. First of all, how do you think they utilize them? Seth, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, I think Alvin Kamara is kind of the X factor here. He often is. All the focus after last week and that performance by Michael Thomas, everybody is wondering if he's going to repeat what he did against the Eagles. In fact, I think Las Vegas has his over-under for receiving yards right now at 98.5, which is incredible in the playoffs in an NFC title game. I'm squarely on the under there because you have Aqib Talib back. They're not going to put Marcus Peters on Michael Thomas again, right? It's going to be Talib. They'll see bracket covers. They'll use zone concepts as well. That means Alvin Kamara out of the backfield is going to be a huge weapon for Drew Brees. If there's one guy on the offense, I think it's Alvin Kamara, sideline to sideline. The Rams don't have the linebacking core. It's been a liability, sideline to cover backs out of the backfield. I think there are many yards, fellas, to be had against this Rams defense that, frankly, was objectively not very good. With all the star power and money they threw at it, this was not a good defense.
How about, again, running the football with Ingram and Kamara to limit Ram possessions?
Yeah, I think that's something you're going to see. They don't want the Los Angeles Rams to be able to pound out drives on the ground, wear out that Saints defense. Another reason why I'm on the under in this game, too. I think this is going to be a relatively low-scoring game. I think you're going to see both teams wanting to run the football. The Rams want to run the football to take the crowd out of it, wear out the defense. C.J. Anderson, the 140 yards he's averaged since coming over, and the Saints need to do the same thing. They've got to make sure their defense is off the field. They got to wear out Aaron Donald and Sue and Fowler and Brockers on this defensive line, and you do that by running the football. Those two running backs, I know I mentioned Alvin Kamara, but Mark Ingram I think is going to have a big game too.
Your thoughts on the running game? Your thoughts on how they utilize their backs?
Well, I think Kamara, like Seth said, he's a huge piece of this, because if you look at the biggest play from that last game, the Michael Thomas touchdown over the top, that came because they bracketed Kamara and had the safety come up on Kamara, and that gave Michael Thomas one-on-one with Marcus Peters, and he got right by him. And so I think the weakness is at linebacker or safety, and that's who's going to be responsible for Alvin Kamara. And so I think what the Saints do with him, the matchups they get, I mean, like Taysom Hill was raving about it in the locker room the other day, that Peyton is a wizard at getting these matchups, and you saw the matchup he got that should have been a touchdown with the Taysom Hill pass to Kamara when he had him on a linebacker. And so there's so many different things they like to do, and one thing that they can even borrow from the Rams when you're talking about moving Kamara and some of the spacing you have where you line him up in the slot and just making it even tougher to cover a guy that has his athleticism and speed. And so, yeah, he's going to be a huge part of it. Obviously, they're going to want to run the ball. I'm not sure about the numbers lately, but I know for most of the season that Rams defense, for all the money they put into that defensive line and defense, they weren't awesome against the run. At one point, they were giving up about 5 yards a carry. And so that is an exploitable place. Again, that's probably a little dependent on a healthy offensive line. And so we'll see there. And you talk about, in terms of the passing game, and Talib probably getting the Michael Thomas matchup. Michael Thomas is still a very physical receiver. Yes. Talib hasn't been exactly healthy all year himself. And so that's going to be a problem for anybody that goes up against him. So it'll be interesting to see what the Rams do in terms of that. I don't think zone coverage is going to get it done. I don't think leaving anybody one-on-one is going to get it done. So, again, how that matchup works out can open up other things for the rest of the offense.
You think it'll be bump and run with Talib on Michael Thomas, trying to slow him down, get him off the timing of that offense?
You can, but, I mean, this isn't Michael Thomas from rookie year. This isn't Michael Thomas from, even last year. This is a guy that's seasoned now. He's a guy that really handled Xavier Rhodes in the second half of that game against the Vikings last year. There are a lot of corners that haven't stopped Michael Thomas. I think it takes a 1 or 2 man effort to really take him out of the game.
How does Los Angeles play Michael Thomas this week?
You're going to see bracket coverage. You'll see Talib on him. They're going to mix up zone and man. Since Talib has returned, they're playing a little more man than they did before in Wade Phillips' scheme. But to the point about the running game here, Chris made, Rams are 28th in the league against the run by DVOA, and I think also by yards per carry. They're just not a good running team. So I know all the focus is on Michael Thomas. He's going to need to have catches in this one, and if it's not him, it's got to be Kirkwood or whoever's open, and Drew's shown that he's not afraid to spread that ball around. But I do think this is going to be Kamara and Ingram. It's going to be their game, 150 yards plus on the ground, controlling that football, low-scoring game. And then Michael Thomas will kind of be the cherry on top. We know he's big. We know he's good. I had a great quote in the locker room that his favorite play from that game last week was actually when he was used as the cheese, I think is how he termed it, the decoy for Kirkwood in the corner. He said that was his favorite play, maybe of the season, I think he might have phrased it as. So he's a team guy. He says, I'm a little selfish like all wide receivers are, but I don't think he's going to be upset if he has 50 yards and 5 catches, but the team wins the game.
Yeah, and ends up in the Super Bowl.
Right.
Ted Ginn Jr. didn't play last time. He'll be back now. Your thoughts on his impact?
Yeah, he's a guy that can stretch the field, something that no other Saints receiver gives you. And I asked him the other day, has the timing been off? Have you and Breeze not been able to get in sync on some of those deep shots? He just said those are 50-50 balls. Sometimes you come down, sometimes you don't. I do think the timing was a little bit off on that first one, and you could tell. You watch Drew long enough, you can tell when a play is going right when he drops back and hits it on time, and then you can tell when that first throw, when he pumped and nothing was there and he let it go, Ginn was open, it just didn't get there because it was a half second late, and I don't know that Breeze has the same deep ball strength that he did a couple years ago. And so I think he does play a factor, especially if they are giving extra coverage to Thomas, and Ginn can make some things happen depending on where you get him matched up. You saw it the game he came back against the Steelers, he had a big impact, and so I would certainly look for him. He's not going to be the guy that gives you 6, 7, 8 catches, but he can give you 4 for 80 yards if you let him.
And again, a guy that's a great change of pace from Michael Thomas. You have to be able to at least account for him on the field. Your thoughts on Ted Ginn Jr. and his impact?
It was perplexing to me the timing that wasn't there in that game. That very first throw by Drew that was an interception, Ginn didn't even find the ball until I think maybe a couple of steps before it was intercepted. That's a play where Drew, and it was underthrown a little bit, no doubt. This is probably 50% on Drew, 50% on Ginn, though, because he didn't find the ball and he didn't make an effort and didn't make a play on the ball. It was an easy interception there. There was another play sometime in the second half where he also didn't find the ball early enough, and I don't know if he missed the route. Maybe it was a bad throw by Drew. It looked like it was over to the left sideline, but the timing isn't there. And that's something that if Drew doesn't have your confidence in this game, I just wonder how many balls are going to go his way. When he's throwing to Kirkwood, he's caught a couple of touchdowns here recently. We know what Michael Thomas has done, Alvin Kamara. Ted Ginn's the wild card here. If Drew doesn't feel like he can trust Ted Ginn in those one-on-one situations, I don't know how many balls we're going to see go up to him.
Guys, and look, when I saw the play, I'm thinking to myself first thing, that's not his throw anymore. In other words, Breeze. I mean, again, he doesn't have the accuracy on the long ball that he once had. He doesn't have the arm strength that he once had. I get it. I get why Peyton went for it. You score right there. Everybody coming in, they're going bonkers. The dome is electric at that point. You don't, it's a chance that, again, they can go down the field like they did and score. It's been kind of a talking point this week. Breeze's arm strength, a little bit less than what it was before. I mean, look, he's still a great quarterback. There are things that you can do. So, players at times, they may lose something on the long ball, but the intermediate ball, his accuracy on the short pass, whatever, I don't think it's a big deal. But the offense has changed a bit, where, again, you don't take the shots like they used to with Meacham and Henderson, which was a big part of this offense at one time.
It was, but I also think a big part of that is running the ball. When you get it, it depends on the situation. A lot of those shots can come on second and short, but it depends on getting yards on first and second down. It depends on the play action and being able to pull those safeties in to respect Ingram and Kamara, and then being able to take those shots. That's where every offense, that's where the Rams offense too. I mean, during their better games toward the early to mid part of the season, it's set up off the run. They're a running team, and you look at the big plays and explosive plays they had to Cooper Kupp before he was hurt and to Brandon Cooks down the field. It's all set up off of the respect that teams have to give Todd Gurley and now C.J. Anderson as well. So as it works for the Saints offense, as you asked, it's got to be set up off of teams and the Rams having to give a lot of attention to Kamara and Ingram, and then some of that stuff can open up downfield. It's what the Rams do so well, and it's what the Saints do well when they're able to take those shots down the field, is have success in the running game as well. Yeah,
I thought it's been brilliant by Sean Payton the last 2 years since Alvin Kamara was drafted, and really since Michael Thomas was drafted, to redesign the offense around Drew Brees' new skill set, if that's what you want to say. The horizontal game, the sideline-to-sideline game, which they're expanding the field that way. Then you have these deep shots that are either one-on-one or they're wide open, because you're right, Drew Brees doesn't have the arm strength that he had once upon a time, but he's not, noodle-armed Peyton Manning like he was in the last couple of years of his career. The one throw to Taysom Hill that he liked to have back, he just took an extra half step and a pump fake, I think, or kind of a little shoulder fake there. He would have had Taysom easily downfield in that spot. That might be, if there's any kind of rust with the week off and not really playing a meaningful game for, 3 to 4 weeks at that point, that might be the rust, so to speak, that you saw there. I'm not really worried about Drew Brees throwing the ball downfield. And the Ted Ginn one that I said, you just got to make a play on the ball, because at worst, that should be an incompletion.
Seth, you brought him up. Talk about the Taysom Hill factor. He's been a spark in almost every game where the Saints have needed a spark. Whether special teams, offense. Heck, I'm expecting to see him out on defense at some point.
He can tackle.
No, he can. Yeah. Your thoughts on Hill?
Yeah, he's been special. Sean Payton talked about him today and how all the meetings that he's going to. He's in a special teams meeting, and then he gets in there for about half the quarterback meeting, running around. He's just is special, I think, is the word for him. The jack of all trades, and he's going to be an important part of this game. The Rams are going to be ready for him now with what they have seen, but I don't know how ready you can actually be for Taysom.
New wrinkle every week.
It's tough for me to say how are they going to use Taysom, because the brilliance of Sean Payton has been he's using him in so many different ways that even the football guys, the head coaches and defensive coordinators, aren't able to figure out. So certainly I'm not going to be able to. But we know he's going to be a part of this game, a big part of it somehow. I do wonder if we're ever going to see, maybe in a big spot here, the 3-quarterback situation on the field again. Just something that I think we saw it once earlier this season. And I know Sean has a couple of these sets out there, and he's waiting to pull them out. I wonder if it's this week.
Your thoughts on him?
Yeah, my coworker Sean Fazan is convinced it's going to be the jump pass that we're going to see at the goal line with Taysom Hill, which probably fits his skill set just as well as any. But I think a couple things with him, I mean, his versatility. It's gotten to the point where, early in the season when teams saw Taysom come in the huddle, you saw head coaches and sprinting down the sideline to call timeout because they weren't sure what the Saints were going to do, and then they might bring him back out, or maybe Peyton just made him burn a timeout. Now I think, you prepare for it, but again, you never know how. And even Taysom said he didn't think that the pass to him down the field would be followed immediately by the throw to Alvin Kamara right there. And so even he is got to be on his toes for when he's going to be in the game. And, he said it in the locker room the other day. When Peyton gives him a new assignment or puts him in a new spot, he immediately goes to that skill group and says, okay, how do you guys do this? What are the kind of intricacies I need to know about this position? And so not only is his skill set great for what the Saints want to do, but just the timing of it. He's a guy that Peyton trusts on any down, obviously, with a couple of fake punt conversions. He's not afraid to give it to him on 3rd and short, 4th and short, whatever it may be. He's got Peyton's trust as a guy who's going to be smart with the football, not fumble it, make the right pitch, make the right read, whatever it may be. And so I think he's a guy certainly in clutch situations. I'd have my eyes on him. And again, you kind of lull a defense into Taysom Hill, maybe it opens something up for somebody else. So he's been a great weapon.
You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Tonight on our panel, Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports, Seth Dunlap of WLAE Radio. We'll come back. We'll break down the Saints' defense against the Rams' offense. We'll also talk a little Pelicans, a little LSU. Stick around. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Tonight, Seth Dunlap of WLAE Radio, Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports are our guests. We talk now about the Saints defense against the Rams offense. All of a sudden, a different Rams offense, the ability to run the football with Todd Gurley and also C.J. Anderson, who I don't know where he came from. I don't know how he gained that much weight, but he looks like a whole different player out there. He's been a bowling ball, and he's been very physical over the last 2 weeks of the regular season. And, of course, last week against Dallas, which, again, was just mind-boggling to see. The Saints got a big lead the first time out. So, again, Gurley, 13 carries, 68 yards, a touchdown. Wasn't the fact everybody thought he was going to be. I think, again, job one for both of these defenses will be to stop the run. How do you stop Gurley and Anderson?
Well, I think a big part of what they do together is the fact that they can keep each other fresh and you're not out there getting worn down. I do think the advantage of having, if you're the Saints, seeing C.J. Anderson back there is maybe you don't worry about the pass quite as much. Gurley's a guy who's got a little bit better hands out of the backfield, but bigger than anything has just been the play of the Rams' offensive line. I mean, C.J. Anderson was a guy who bounced around to a couple teams, and no offense to him, but those other teams didn't have the Rams' offensive line. That's where you have that production. You can plug probably a lot of guys in there. Certainly CJ is fresher than some backs in the league right now and fresher than Gurley was after getting kind of banged up over those last couple of weeks. But that offensive line has been the biggest part of it. But again, like Seth mentioned earlier, I think the Saints are a little bit different than Dallas in terms of their interior defensive line. And that linebacker, I think the Saints have the speed. They don't let guys turn the corner. When you look at Demario Davis and Alex Anzalone, they've done an excellent job. And so I think the Saints have the tools to stop the run, and obviously that'll be a big part of it because when you look at the game against the Eagles, that was where everything changed. When Wendell Smallwood wasn't getting 5 and 6 yards on first down, right. You make Nick Foles have to convert some longer second and third downs, everything changed.
Right. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's C.J. Anderson. I guess like small Christian Okoye or something. Yeah. I haven't seen anybody that big be this productive over that span in a very long time. Maybe Eddie Lacy as well. But this is all going to be about the run game. If you talk about their offense post Cooper Kupp, he's kind of their Michael Thomas. I thought he was one of the 5-6 best receivers in football, and losing him, it just completely changed the complexion of their offense. They still have big play guys. They got Brandon Cooks, they got Robert Woods, and of course we know about Todd Gurley, was an MVP candidate for most of the year. But if you can stop the run here, Jared Goff just hasn't been the same guy when he's on the road. 10 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, just an 82 quarterback rating in his 8 games on the road this year, and crowd noise really flusters him. You didn't hear a lot of crowd noise, if we're being honest here, in the first game between those two teams because the Saints got the big lead and the crowd kind of got out of it. And then you had some Rams players this week say, I don't know what the big deal is. We didn't hear the crowd. You know what? They're kind of right. We didn't really hear the crowd in this previous game. They're going to hear the crowd this week. This is why I think you're going to see a lot of hurry up and tempo from the Rams. I would be stunned if, at least for the first couple of drives, 2-3 drives in this game, they don't go almost strictly no huddle here, try to take the crowd out of the game. I'm a little concerned about that. Losing Sheldon Rankins means you're not really going to have a pass rush here. It's something that I am concerned about, is the no huddle and the tempo.
What's interesting again about the pass rush part of this, you can always move Jordan inside if you needed to, and have Okafor and Davenport on the outside. He has been able to rush the passer from the inside in the past. You don't want to put him out, take him away from going outside. But again, if you needed to, you could do that.
Yeah, well, we need to have a conversation about Marcus Davenport here, and a real honest conversation. He's a rookie.
Yes.
Nobody expects him to be Cam Jordan or an all-pro guy, but he was drafted for this moment.
No doubt.
He has been, and I understand he was injured, but he has been a complete non-factor, guys, since he returned from that injury. They're not even double-teaming him. They're not chipping him anymore. He's getting no pressure. He's not really good against the run. I don't want to say he's bad, but he's not good against the run. He's still learning there. And the Saints, again, moved up to draft him really for this moment against the Rams when they need pass rush in this spot. Again, I think he's had an okay rookie year, but Marcus Davenport needs to show up here. I still don't know. If they don't get production out of Marcus Davenport and Cam Jordan off the edge here, and maybe Onyemata as well, if they don't get any pressure on Jared Goff, I think it's going to be a long day.
Your thoughts on the Saints pass rush?
Yeah,
and also Davenport.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, he was a guy that he really seemed like he hit his stride. It was really a bit masked in that game against Washington. The game that he had, because it was Drew Brees breaking the record and what we thought would be a breakout game for Traquan Smith. And Davenport had a really good game, but he gets hurt, and it did kind of set him back a little bit. I do think this is another game where it would really benefit the Saints if he had one of his better games, but you're asking a lot against that Rams offensive line. So the challenge is going to be getting after Jared Goff and how Dennis Allen wants to attack him when they bring pressure, when they drop more guys back in coverage, when they give him some different looks. I think you're going to have to get creative in that department because you don't have Sheldon Rankins this week. Yeah,
let's talk a little bit about, and I've talked about it all week long, and you kind of mentioned it, Seth. You know, when you talk about Goff on the road, not the same quarterback that he is in Los Angeles. Again, crowd noise affecting him. We didn't see a lot of crowd noise in the first game, obviously because the Saints got up. The dynamic between McVay and also Goff, not just giving him the play in the headset, but kind of giving him a little tutorial, coaching him up, kind of letting him know what's going on. The crowd in the Dome can affect this. Again, loud, not able to communicate through the headset, and then they have to go to hand signals. And all of a sudden, you know, that little extra something that McVay gives Goff in terms of, you know, maybe just, you know, a little bit of information on what's going on with the defense, that's out the window now. How do you think that will affect Goff with the crowd noise? How do you think that affects what McVay and Goff have done all year long in terms of the communication in the headset? Well,
it's huge. You can be in the headset till 15 seconds on the play clock, so if the crowd noise is affecting that and you're getting up to the line of scrimmage late, it's certainly going to affect it. Jared Goff, and he's been a good quarterback, and his progression under McVay is real. I thought he was going to be a bust after his first year. He hasn't been that. I think he's going to be a very good quarterback for a long time in this league, but his development is stunted. Reading his progressions here. He is still a one-read quarterback. Yes. When he has to progress beyond that, it is not good for the Rams. This is why I firmly believe we're going to see Sean McVay, with the 11 personnel they run the entire time, just hurry up the entire time, use tempo so he can be in his ear in the headsets for as long as possible. I expect them to get up to the line of scrimmage with 30, 25 seconds, and then they're going to have 10 seconds of McVay reading the defense. Sean Payton today really called out the fans and said, this is why we needed to be loud. Not just 15 seconds on the play clock, but really about 25, 30 seconds on the play clock. So rest up those lungs.
Right, it is true. It's a different dynamic with those two. And the fans, again, we have smart fans here north. They have to be engaged. You have to understand there's a communication that's going further than what maybe Breeze and Peyton do in that headset. He's actually coaching that kid up, getting him ready for the play.
Yeah, and I think another factor of it is not having Cooper Kupp. He has been Jared Goff's safety blanket. He has been that guy he's looked for when everything else breaks down. He and Kupp are just we're always on the same page. Kupp had a big touchdown in the first game against the Saints, and so that is where things changed a lot because the matchup, Kupp on whoever, was so favorable for him. So, everybody's of a different opinion. I think we are overestimating Jared Goff a little bit. I do think when he gets on the road and has to play in this environment, he's done it well, but like Seth mentioned, not necessarily facing the full crowd noise of the dome yet. Things are going to happen. I mean, it's going to be little moments. You think back to 2009 and Brett Favre throwing across his body. It's one play, one moment, one miscommunication, whatever it may be, that can change the game. That's where getting this home field advantage was so big. This is what the Saints played for, because in a game like this is where it can affect a young quarterback. And so I think that is all factored in when you talk about the game. It's not just what happens on the field. It's how you handle that moment. It's the hype. It's everybody saying the pressure is squarely on Jared Goff and how he performs on the road and how he handles that. And so certainly that's going to be something to deal with.
Well, and look, I think we would all concur. You want Goff to have to beat you, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you want to stop that run. You want to make him one-dimensional. You want Goff to have to deal with that crowd, to deal with again, the ability, especially with the noise, the lineman getting that extra half a second, that extra half a step in terms of rushing the passer. And look, you mentioned it, Seth, they've got weapons, Cooks, Reynolds, Woods, even Higbee at the tight end position. But again, he is still a quarterback in the early stages of the career. And if you're ultimately going to stop something, you want to stop the run and let him beat you.
Yeah, one of the reasons I was more worried about that Eagles game is because who they had at quarterback.
Yes.
You had a Super Bowl winning quarterback who was just a calming influence over the entire Eagles team and his head coach, really, Doug Peterson, the play caller. Really, that should be a storyline this offseason. I don't know how they let him get away. But it's kind of the opposite here. They've never been in this spot. That was their first playoff win for most of those Rams teams outside of Aqib Talib, who's won a Super Bowl before. No experience in this moment. And when you talk about Drew Brees on one side, who's been in this moment before, and Jared Goff, who has had that deer in the headlights look when he's on the road, forget about it in this moment. He hasn't been here before. This is just a huge factor that's favorable for the Saints here. I don't think you can overstate it.
Right. Special team units. When you look at Lutz and Morstead, Zerline and Hecker, I think pretty even in terms of that matchup.
Yeah, these are both kickers, young kickers with huge legs that can, hit from 50 plus. Zerline especially is unbelievable. And then Morstead and Hecker. Morstead's a terrific spot punter and has always seemed to pin him in the right moments, even though we haven't had to see him all the time this year. And so, and then you add in the Taysom Hill factor. That's where I'd give the Saints the edge, just because he can do so many different things. If you're talking about punt block, punt coverage, kick coverage, fake punts, he has it all in his repertoire, and Peyton trusts him a lot. So if I did give an edge, I'd give it to the Saints, but I think they're both doing a good job in that category. Hecker's converted a number of fakes himself.
Yes. So. Yeah, and I give the edge to the Saints slightly too. Their coverage units have been fantastic all year long. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's interesting. If we go outside of place kicking, I'd give the edge to the Rams. But Lutz has just been so much more consistent inside of 50 yards. Now, I have a slight concern that Will Lutz missing that kick in that spot, how that's going to affect him mentally.
Press?
Well, he might have. We just haven't seen him miss that badly in a spot. And look, it was a 50-plus yard field goal. That's not easy, no matter how good you are here.
But it never had a chance.
No, it didn't have a chance. It almost seemed like that either he lined it up wrong, he just completely shanked it, and I wonder. A kicker, and you know how mental being a kicker is in the National Football League. Let's hope Will Lutz calms himself down if he gets a redo in that spot. Kind of got saved because, let's be honest here, if the Saints had lost that game, the entire conversation would be around that missed kick from Will Lutz.
No doubt about it. Let's talk about the coaching matchup. Two of the greatest offensive minds in the game right now, Peyton versus McVay. Your thoughts?
Well, I think kind of like we talked about, the experience factor comes into a little bit. Peyton's been in this situation a number of times. He has players that have been in this situation a lot. When you talk about Ted Ginn, who's been in the Super Bowl, you talk about Max Unger, who's won one with the Seahawks. Obviously Breeze, Bushrod, Morstead, probably forgetting some guys, but there's experience there that you don't see up and down that Rams roster. I mean, one of their most veteran guys, Andrew Whitworth, just won his first playoff game last week. Love him, former Tiger. And so that is a factor. But in terms of that coaching matchup, I think where that may come into play is how you prepare the guys during the week, how you have your team prepared mentally. I haven't been out there in LA. Obviously, Garland Gillen has, so he can tell you a little bit better what they're doing. But as far as the Saints, you go in that locker room, it's the same as what we've seen in the regular season. Guys playing ping pong, guys playing Super Smash Brothers and video games, and they are relaxed, they are prepared, and it feels like they're really ready for the moment. And I think what they've developed in that locker room, even going back to some of the 7 and 9 years, and keeping the guys they like around goes a long way. And so I think Peyton's done an excellent job in that category of keeping his team on the right path, because when you're basically written into this position at the beginning of the season, it's not easy to tell your team, hey, we have to work for it week in and week out and get on this win streak, whatever. So Peyton's done an excellent job there.
Talk about the head coach.
It's the coach-quarterback combos we see here in the conference championships. I don't know if we've seen a quartet like this. We have a Hall of Fame coach here in Sean Payton, Hall of Fame quarterback Drew Brees. In New England, Hall of Fame coach in Belichick, Hall of Fame quarterback in Brady. Hall of Fame coach in Kansas City and Andy Reid. He's there. At me
no,
about
I think
Andy
he's there.
Reid.
I agree.
At me about Andy Reid. If you don't think he's Hall of Fame even without a Super Bowl, and obviously got the MVP. And then you have obviously the flavor of the last couple of years here in Sean McVay. The 1 week leak there is Jared Goff. If we were just talking about coaching chops here and offensive chops, we got to be honest. Lots of people want to hate on McVay because he's the hot new guy. He has that supermodel girlfriend, kind of, the hate, a little bit similar to what Brady hate gets. You hate greatness. Right. But Sean McVay's been sensational in resurrecting that offense and really what he's done with Jared Goff. You look at Jared Goff, an utter disaster with Jeff Fisher, how he has coached him and designed the offense to play to his strengths, I don't think can be overstated here. Sean McVay is brilliant. But remember, this is his first time in this spot. Same with most of those teams. So the advantage, again, goes to Sean Payton. But let's kind of soak this in, the entire conference championship, the coach-quarterback combos. We may not see something like this and this much Hall of Fame level talent for quite a time.
Great point.
I think one thing, too, that may go underrated is Wade Phillips, and he's a guy that anything McVay hasn't seen, Wade Phillips probably has, and kudos to McVay. It's probably not easy to bring a guy like that on your staff because he's got the former head coaching experience and trumps you in age, obviously. And so I think the Wade Phillips factor, and at least having been there before with the Broncos, can play a role as well.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this about Sean McVay. It shows a little humility that he turned the entire defense over to Wade Phillips. Sean McVay doesn't dabble in the defense. He's basically the assistant head coach that runs the defense here. So a little humility by the young guy McVay as well.
A la Peyton with Allen, right?
Yep.
Along the same lines. Concerned about Cromer being in Los Angeles. Again, the running game has turned around for them. He knows the Saints personnel. He obviously knows the Saints offense. I mean, it's not like having a player that goes there and you're trying to maybe talk to a player a little bit about scheme and thoughts. And, of course, knowing the little nuances that Peyton likes to do as well because he's been around him for so long. Any concerns there, guys?
I think Peyton's a smart guy. And at this point, and when you look at any NFL coaching staff, guys have been here, guys have been there, players have been here or there. I don't think that's too much of a factor. No, I wouldn't say too much.
Yeah, I would say if it was fresh coming off this Saints staff, maybe, but really since Cromer's left, this entire offense, and if you speak about the running game, has been completely redesigned. So I don't really think it's a factor. You can probably find guys, even more than Cromer, in both locker rooms that know Wade Phillips or Sean McVay and vice versa here. So. All
right, guys, the moment of truth here. Saints on Sunday, tell me a little bit about what you think is going to happen and who you think is going to win between the Rams and the Saints.
I'm picking the Saints. I think for better or worse, they've been playing to the level of their opponent. We saw a little bit later in the regular season. They played down to a couple teams that they probably should have beaten. Maybe they played down a little bit early to the Eagles, but right now I think they'll bring it with the Rams. This is the moment, the game, the team that they knew they'd face and they knew they'd have to be ready for. So I'd go Saints, and I think the leadership factor, the experience factor, and the dome factor makes a difference in what is a very, very close game.
I am also going to go with the Saints here. Here's a couple of stats for you. First off, in the last 5 years, road teams have never won a conference championship. Home teams are 10 for 10 in the last 5 years. I think they're going to go 12 for 12. I expect both home teams to win. Also, if you're looking at the Vegas line here, Vegas has actually made the line a little closer than it should be because they have so much money on the Los Angeles Rams. Most of the sharps in Vegas who know a lot of the insides and outsides of this think this is going to be a 7-point game or so. So I've got the Saints 27 and the Rams 20. Relatively low scoring game. I don't think it's going to be a shootout. 27-20 Saints.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be a shootout either.
What's the over-under? What, 57?
57, so I'm right.
Yeah, taking the under. I would take the under too.
Yeah, I think it'll be a close game. I think it'll be a low-scoring game. I don't think we'll see what we saw in Week 9. All right, you mentioned you think the home teams, you talk about New England, Kansas City. Your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that this is a really bad spot for New England except for one guy. Tom Brady is the greatest cold weather quarterback in history, and it's not close. Guys, he is 24-4 when it's under 30 degrees in his career. 24-4. He's 5-1 when it's under 20 degrees. It's supposed to be, what, 10 degrees or so in Kansas City? He's the greatest quarterback in a lot of areas. He's the greatest cold weather quarterback, and I don't think it's close. But Andy Reid at home with this quarterback, I think it's going to be too much. I think that the Chiefs might actually win by double digits here. I like the Chiefs that much in this spot.
I like the Chiefs. I don't know if I like them by that much, and certainly Andy Reid is a guy who would deserve to get there after all he's been through in his playoff missteps and Kansas City's own franchise playoff missteps. I would pick the Patriots if it weren't for a couple things. One, I think what the Chiefs have been able to do with their running game, despite losing Kareem Hunt, despite losing Spencer Ware, it's been an excellent job, and that says a lot about their offensive line. And I think Travis Kelce is another guy that he gives you what Gronk used to give you in terms of a tight end and a reliable target for a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, who's going to have to lean on him in some big situations. So I'm going with the Chiefs.
Yeah, and really quickly here, remember Andy Reid against Bill Belichick, 2-2 with Kansas City, but 2 blowout wins, 2 close losses. So might see another blowout. You never know.
Great stat you're throwing out there. 866-3200 is the phone number. Let's go to Homa and Greg. Greg, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Greg.
Hey, guys. I don't know if I have a question, an opinion, or a concern, but do you guys have any opinions about the fact that teams can game plan against Drew Brees not being able to take that deep shot because he underthrew Ted Ginn Jr. really bad, and the next time they wanted to go down the field, they put in Taysom Hill to throw the ball down the field. Do you think teams picked up on that? And do you think that that's a concern? And I'll hang up and listen.
See, I don't think the Taysom Hill deep throw was because they don't think Brees can make the throw. I just think that was a play where they wanted to catch the defense off guard. I'll take you first. We talked about it a little bit early in the show. I don't think it's a real concern for this team, honestly.
No, I don't think it's a huge concern. I think a lot of it comes down to timing, and that would be the concern, that hasn't been there with your deep play guy, Ted Ginn Jr., but I wouldn't say I'd be overly concerned about it. I think Brees can still get the ball where he needs to get it when he needs to get it there. It's just on the when and getting the ball out on time and everything being on schedule and the play being in sync. That said, maybe it's not Ted Ginn that we should be looking for on the deep ball, but Michael Thomas, who can get over the top as well at times, depending on the matchup. And his timing, obviously, with Brees is a little bit better. Yeah,
they're forcing him to defend sideline to sideline, like I mentioned before. That's how they've redesigned this offense with the lack of arm strength that Drew once had. So you got 53 yards to defend sideline to sideline. There's too much area of the field to defend, even if you can't throw it 50, 60 yards downfield anymore.
Guys, let's shift gears to the Pelicans, 21-24. Last night losing to Golden State. AD's been putting up some historic numbers. Again, he's finally taken that leadership role over the last few games. We're starting to see him be a little bit more animated on the sidelines. They're healthy now with Mirotic and obviously Peyton back. I'll take you first, Chris. Chris, should Pelican fans be excited about this team turning the corner? Is this a byproduct of playing some really bad teams? Where are the Pelicans right now? I'm going to say they should be happy they've picked up a couple more wins and I guess moved up the standings a tad bit. The difference between that 8th spot and really second to last above the Suns isn't too large right now. Right. But that said, I'm not going to use the words turning the corner. I don't think anybody in that building would either right now. I think right now the Pelicans are where they are. They are average. They get it done some nights. They don't get it done other nights. They start slow some nights. They start faster some nights, whether it be home, on the road, whatever it may be. And so I'm not willing to really say they're going one way or the other. I would say the best thing right now is that they have gotten Mirotic back. So hopefully when you look at
games like last night's against the Warriors, where they did compete for up and down most of the game. Hopefully that can turn into some wins against better teams, and especially stop dropping games to some of these poor East Coast teams.
Yeah, there's too much talent on this Pelicans team to be where they're at. I mean, we just got to call it like what we're calling it. I am really tired of the storylines from some fans and some in the media, to be honest, that we hear that Anthony Davis doesn't have talent around him, and that's why he can't win here. I'm sorry, that's not the case. You got an all-NBA defensive guy in Drew Holiday, who's one of the best guards now in the league. You got Julius Randle, who's averaging 21 points a game. You got Nico Mirotic, who had 21 points yesterday in the first 10 minutes off the bench. You got a pretty solid point guard in Elfrid Payton. I could go on here. They have enough talent here. They're probably somewhere between the third and the fifth most talented team in the Western Conference.
What's the issue?
There's a lot of issues here. First, and I've talked about it before, is Anthony Davis's lack of leadership in the locker room. They really miss Rajon Rondo. I'm sorry, AD, in your 7th year, you got to be that leader on and off the court. Not a lot of people want to talk about that. We've got to talk about that. And also, I just believe that Alvin Gentry is a great offensive mind. I really believe that. If he doesn't last here, he's going to end up on a staff somewhere. He's a brilliant offensive basketball mind, and he'll have a long career still, even though I guess he's approaching 60 now. But his player management and as a CEO of an NBA team, I got a lot of questions about here. You can't just be the brilliant offensive guy as an NBA head coach. Pat Riley was a brilliant mind, but he was also a great manager of personalities. Same with Phil Jackson, brilliant offensive mind, right? Great personality manager.
Steve Kerr does it.
And Steve Kerr, absolutely. Great point here. Greg Popovich, same thing. He's the CEO. Alvin Gentry isn't that here. And I think it's a little AD, it's a little Dell Demps. Don't want to exempt him from criticism here, and a little Alvin Gentry. There's lots of blame to go around, but they shouldn't be where they're at.
The biggest problem for me all season long is the lack of energy, effort on the defensive side. Again, the rotations, not hitting the boards. I mean, the things that, again, win basketball games for you. I understand they were injured and they weren't maybe 100%, but a lot of teams in the NBA are not 100%. I didn't see the effort and energy, and I didn't see anybody turning around on that team and demanding that, and that's AD's job.
Yeah.
You know, they've been importing leadership on this team since AD got here. It's about time he starts to take the reins of this team.
That's where you do lose some of those games to mediocre teams, is when, you know, what should be a maybe 7-8 point run turns into a 15-point run because guys aren't playing defense, because guys are being careless with the ball. And you saw it against the Miami Heat earlier this year. I think they were down by like 31 in the first half. Games like that where they fought their way back into it. And it was a close game in the second half, but you should have never been down by that much. That's what's costing the Pelicans games here and there. And where they had that 10-game run last year, I don't see that in this team right now. Maybe they proved me wrong, because they certainly proved a lot of people wrong with what they did last year. But again, that's asking a lot in terms of what's going to be a tight Western Conference playoff race.
Yeah, guys, there's a lot of talk about the Pelicans being the most active team right now, trying to make a trade. Any move that's going to be made with that first-round pick has got to be protected, because you don't know what Anthony Davis is going to do at the end of the season.
Yeah, we'll see. We know Dylan Dell, if he makes something here, it's just incredibly disappointing, I guess is the most succinct way to put it. They are way too talented to be where they are.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Chris, you would concur with that?
Yeah, especially considering what they did last season. I mean, you were expecting them to build on that in the first couple games. It looked like they were a team that knew how they wanted to play, that they wanted to play upbeat with pace and energy. And the question was, could they sustain it over 82 games? But they haven't even sustained it over 40.
Yeah, it's been unfortunate. Seth Dunlap, WWL Radio, Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports, thanks for being on our panel tonight. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV at 10 p.m. You can catch us statewide, Pelican Sports Television, 9 p.m. every Friday night, and always at ericasher.com. Again, catch me on the radio, Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2, and the iHeart Radio app. That's noon to 2 weekdays. Also, you can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. As mentioned, all the previous shows of Inside New Orleans Sports can be seen at ericasher.com as well. Again, special thanks to our guests tonight, Seth Dunlap and also Chris Hagan. Also the WLE production staff, Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, also Alex Chacon, Naila Jones, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for watching. Looking forward to a big game on Sunday. I think the Saints will win. The panel thinks the Saints will win. So again, that means it's on to Atlanta. Hopefully good luck to the Saints, and we'll be talking about it next Thursday night right here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks for watching.